all my dearest friends call me Jack. The satyrs and demons in my life call me Jake. Come out and play, Jake. Come on out, Jake, Jake. Doesn't matter anyway, it's all a paper moon, isn't it? By the by, if you're willing to suspend your disbelief, I must tell you that I'm dead. I'm Barrymore's ghost. I shit you not, I'm dead. I'm a ghost. You see, in the deep mythology of the theater, there are certain actors sentenced to spend their purgatory as theater ghosts. Why? Because the gods, and they are plural, by the way, have judged me as having sinned grievously against the theater by squandering my gifts and abandoning the theater in the selfish pursuit of fame and fortune. What horseshit. As you can see, this theater I'm ghosting is in rehearsals for a play, hence the table and chairs, this makeshift set. From what I've seen, it's a very good play. Can't remember the name of the play or the playwright. Very cleverly written. They use the F word as a noun, verb, adjective, adverb. Never in my day. Oh, never. But the acting is quite good. The dialogue is so obscene, it's almost poetry. The only drawback, an over-articulate, bitchy English director, the kind we used to call high dumb. You know the type? Once you get past the accent, they're saying absolutely nothing worthwhile. I'm here before you as part of my penance to set the record straight, as my father used to say. Let's begin at the beginning, shall we? I died 83 years ago in a hospital room with my dear brother Lionel, one of America's finest actors, second only to me. At my bedside, and a girlish Hollywood priest trying to give me the last sacraments. He was a celebrity missionary. You know the type? I'll not only forgive you for the sins you've committed, I'll forgive you for the sins you are going to commit, if you'll invite me to your opening night cocktail party. I knew I was dying when I couldn't feel the holy water sprinkled on my face. Hovering over me was a crestfallen doctor and a teary nurse watching me slip away. I was in a coma. Couldn't move, couldn't speak, but I could still hear and see everything. I could see Lionel's grieving face as I was sliding toward the light. Looking into his eyes, I desperately wanted to say, I love you, but I couldn't speak. But as I stared deeper into his eyes, what I really wanted to say was, don't try and upstage me now, you son of a bitch. Let's get Lionel straight for the record. Lionel had stolen so many scenes from me in our careers, both in the movies and the theater, that I knew he was now angling to pronounce me dead before the doctor did. And true to form, the old thief was upstaging me now on my own deathbed. He was trying to close my eyes with the palm of his hand. I was screaming in my brain, I'm only dying for Christ's sake, Lionel. I'm not dead yet. Anyway, I died peacefully in my sleep, as they say. They're full of shit. Nobody dies peacefully. Lionel had gone, because of grief, completely nuts. And I'm certain he thought we were in a movie. And I'm sure he thought, after tugging my eyelids closed, the doctor would have called out, cut! Marvelous, Lionel! Splendid, Lionel! Let's do another one! A little more voice, John! Lionel. My brother Lionel. A gentleman and a scholar. And generations yet unborn shall call him blessed. Jesus, I wonder where he is. I miss him. Speaking of death, let's get one of the stories of my demise. Ooh. Now enshrined in the mythology of Jack Barrymore, straight for the record. Gene Fowler, sports writer, John Decker, novelist, Ben Hecht, Charlie MacArthur, my deepest and dearest friends, they were the Vice Squad. Now, after Lionel informed the squad of my death, they, to assuage their immeasurable grief, retired to one of our favorite drinking haunts to drown their immeasurable sorrow. Now, with them was Errol Flynn, who idolized me, copied me perfectly in word and gesture. I had a habit of tugging at my ear like this. So did Errol. I'd roll my R's to, impress the culture vultures. Where's the Rolls, Errol? You mean the Rolls Royce, Jack? Oh, he was so good. After a while, I started calling him John, then Jack, then Jake. Now, the story goes, despondent at my passing, Flynn drank himself into oblivion. So the squad left him, went down to the funeral parlor, and bribed the undertaker to borrow my body for an hour. Then they took me to Flynn's apartment, sat me down in my favorite chair, located in front of Flynn's beautiful Italian marble fireplace, went back, gathered Flynn, brought him home, opened the door, walked him into the room. Errol didn't regain consciousness for 2 days. Well, maybe it was 12 hours. 4 hours, okay, anyway. Flynn was never quite the same. I think without me around, developing a personality of his own was quite beyond him. Oh, they were such a glorious bunch of bastards, weren't they? They were my true friends. And they had an irreverence that was almost holy. I miss them. I wonder where they are. Ooh. My biographers say this story is apocryphal. Don't believe them. They're sluts, all of them. At best, they deal in half-truths. At worst, deception and lies. That story is true. Believe me. I was there. And even if it weren't true, why diminish the legend? The mob needs legends, don't they? Anyway, it's all just a paper moon, isn't it? As my father used to say. Oh, you should have seen him, my father. Maurice, he glittered when he walked down Broadway. He was the most handsome and witty man I've ever known. One minor playwright named McKay once said to my father, who was one of the finest actors of his time, Barrymore, you'll never become a great actor unless you have a great sorrow or a harrowing experience. And the old man said, well, if you write the play, I shall have both. That was my father. And I idolized him, as it did acres and acres of women. For he was Broadway's matinee idol for a decade. In evening dress, he was a panther. In street clothes, he was a prize fighter. I must say that my father did take the art of promiscuity to a new dimension. But my mother, Georgiana, loved him with a love that was more than love. He ended his days in Bellevue. His collapsed due to too many women, vodka, and its incipient paresis, syphilis. I visited him there on one occasion, and as I watched him with his back to me, looking like a little boy at a small table splashed in sunlight, he turned to me, and when I saw his face, I thought I had seen a miracle. He was rejuvenated. He was the panther of old. Jack, look, Jack, I've written a new play. Read it. Well, I read the first page. It said it was a lovely day in June. Second page, it was a lovely day in June. Third page, it was a lovely day in June. Fourth page, 100 pages of it was a lovely day in June. What do you think of it, Jack? What do you think of it? I said, Father, I think you should title it, It Was a Lovely Day in June. And he laughed his boyish little laugh and hugged me, and then retreated quietly back into the abyss of his broken brain. After he died and I was going through his clothes, I found a scrap of paper on which he had scribbled his epitaph. He walked beneath the stars and slept beneath the sun. He lived a life of going to do and died with nothing done. The theater broke his heart. It got so bad that my father had to start the first actors' union, called RATS, which is star spelled backward. Broadway was thievery and mediocrity, very much the same as it is today. After his plays, my father, in curtain speeches, would harangue the producers, blaming the ills of Broadway on the Jews and the Catholic Church. He blamed the Jews for the price of the ticket and the Catholics for the mediocrity of the plays. My father started out as an apostle of the theater and ended up a martyr. I, one terrible night, saw my father, old, exhausted, sick, hissed and booed from the stage because he could not remember his lines. His memory had failed him. He sat in his dressing room, a bent old man in a rocking chair, and wept in agony and humiliation, utterly alone, without an ounce of consolation in this, his final failure. Except a young boy in the doorway, too afraid to come into the room. The Barrymores became known as a theatrical dynasty. The Barrymores became known as the royal family of American theater. Royal. Do you know what a theatrical dynasty looks like? My grandmother, Mum, who I dearly loved, died in a sanitarium alone. My mother, who I barely knew, she was always on tour, died in a sanitarium alone. My father died in a sanitarium alone. Ethel, my luminous sister, closet alcoholic, died in a room alone. Lionel, my brilliant brother, closet heroin addict, died in a room alone. We should have been known as the royal family of sanitariums. I never wanted to become an actor. My dream was to become an artist. I wanted to be a painter. I dreamed of being Cézanne, Miro. I worked hard at it for 3 years, but only sold one painting for $10. And to guess who? Andrew Carnegie. I'm told he gave it to a disliked cousin for a Christmas present. But in the long run, I failed miserably. Lionel also wanted to become a painter, but not with my intensity. I wanted the life of an artist. He was content with just the profession, but he failed also. Ethel tried to hide away in a convent school in Georgia, and she failed. We ferociously rejected the mantle of the royal family, knowing that mantle entrapped you in death and poverty and madness. But unfortunately, one simply has to make a living, doesn't one? So Lionel and Ethel surrendered and followed in the family footsteps, and quickly became successful and quite powerful forces in the American theater because they had genius. I gave it a go as a newspaper man, see if I could paint pictures with words. Journalism was too factual for my flights of imagination. If a suicide jumped from as high as 10 stories, I wrote 55 stories, giving him time enough to finish the note that was found amid the splinters of his shattered skull. They don't appreciate flights of imagination in the newspaper business. So I got the old pink slip, another failure. Broke, homeless, Living under a chestnut tree in Gramercy Park, I looked down one day and saw a pair of footprints. I followed them out of curiosity and a bit of fear. I realized years later that they were my father's footsteps, and I had finally surrendered to my destiny too. Ethel got me into a play. Isn't nepotism a wonderful thing? It was called Alice, Sit by the Fire. How bad was the play? This play could lower collectively the IQ of an audience by 10 points. I was drunk just about every night. A disgrace. So they fired me. I was fired 17 times during my career, which is a record for a North American actor. So I went on tour with Tootles, which closed in a cornfield in Des Moines. Next, Pantaloon, which should have opened in a cornfield in Des Moines. And my magnum opus, The Boys in Company B. Oh, nobody's feet touched the stage in that production. They flew on and flew off. It was sort of a gay airport of sorts. I was young and quite ignorant then of a strange truth about acting and actors. The great ones I'd seen, Forrest, Tree, Irving, Booth, not the Lincoln one, the other one. My father and even my brother, part of their power derived from a certain feline grace. In their nature, they could woo an audience. I never had that inexplicable power. You see, they brought their real selves onto the stage, where I had no real self to bring anywhere. I invented myself every single day of my life, both on stage and off. Sometimes the invention got a patent. Most of the time, it didn't. Because of the some 20 plays that I did during this period, at least 18 were guaranteed within 10 minutes to cure insomnia. They were bum plays, and I was a bum actor, and I knew it. Maybe I was always a bum actor. I've carried that sordid secret about with me all my life. And then it happened. As mysterious as one's birth, as strange as a morning dream, I opened on Broadway in a despicable play called The Fortune Hunter. What happened? I became famed, a matinee idol. Believe me, never mind booze, forget drugs, forget money, never mind power. The great, most deadly narcotic is fame. And I became an addict for the rest of my life. Let me tell you something about fame. It comes like a thief in the night. Dali, Picasso, Bosch, they knew what fame was. They painted it. A blizzard of women, flocks of culture vultures smudging out the sun, a montage of distorted, starving faces. You're nothing but a piece of ass and a pound of gossip to just about everybody. You become prey. Can't walk down the streets, screamed at, pushed and pulled, backed up against walls, chased down alleys, trapped in cars and limos, hands smashing up against the windows. And everywhere, liars, flatterers, sycophants, deceivers. Fame? Literally, you cannot urinate without some fanatic aiming it for you. Jesus, I'm terrified. Alone, trapped in an insane mob, and I can't let go because I loved it. I loved the debauchery of fame. I wallowed in it. But after too long a while, I became, spiritually exhausted. As my father used to say, nothing goes downhill faster than a thoroughbred. Too many nights waking up in a blurry, unknown room, the ceiling spinning, smelling of stale champagne and tobacco, the scent of someone lying next to me, tentatively reaching out my hand, hoping to sweet Jesus it's not an orangutan or something like that. The culture vultures are the single most sexually perverse clan I've ever encountered. They are a veritable thesaurus of perversity. So, one snowy morning, with an irate boyfriend pointing a .38 at my genitals, I decided to get married. My first bus accident. I was looking for someone to protect me. I think I wanted a mother's protection, something like that. I wanted what's the word? Sanctuary. I wanted sanctuary against all the madness. A home, a wife, slippers, isolation in each other, some silence together, and eternal love. Like most bums, I had a passion, a secret passion for domesticity. And I thought all this was possible in this brave new world. I found her. Her name was Catherine Harris. I was 27, she was 17. As I grew older, they got younger. Think pink ruled my life. She had brilliant emerald eyes, just like my stepmother had. Beautiful hair, lithe-limbed, and when she walked into a room, heads just didn't turn. They spun. So impressively lovely. She could stop a clock. She had a slight lisp and an innocence that approached the sacred. I immediately canonized her and put her up in a stained glass window in the Sistine Chapel of my mind. Her father went off the planet, completely nuts, when he found out we were in love and planning to get married. He threatened to cut off his ex-wife's alimony and cut off something of mine as well. He forced her mother to enroll her in the Convent of the Assumption in Paris. Oh, I loved it. The poor bastard never knew the erotic power of forced separation. So, 6 months later, we were married. I remember I told her on our wedding night, the both of us, enwrapped in a shawl, on a coral beach, watching the moon set and the sun rise. Nothing can come between us now. The only thing is people, I whispered. And she said, yes, I know. But she didn't know. We were good then. But when she got a taste of fame, when she felt its fangs, she changed. Sweet Pea. I always called her Sweet Pea and sometimes Tiny Egg. My enchanted one, I'm exhausted. Sweet Pea, this is the 5th Broadway opening night this month. Let's stay home, open a bottle of wine, read the Kama Sutra to each other. Tiny Egg, I know that Spencer and Catherine and Stratfords and Wells and Strombergs will be there. I'm exhausted. Let's pass on this one and stay home. Really? I don't care if the 12 apostles are going. I'm not going. Are we speaking English here? Do you understand English? Don't you understand that the finest performances are not on the stage, but in their dressing rooms when you and I, after the play, have to go and tell them how magnificent they were? I'm sick of all this mendacity. It means living a lie. No, please, Tiny Egg, don't cry. I'll have the car pick us up at 7:30. What? What, Sweet Pea? Yes, I love you too. But she began to do things that disturbed me. I noticed she started chatting up our driver, Terrence, every day. Young man, relatively handsome. They chatted exclusively one day for 6 minutes and 22 seconds. I fired Terrence, and she went into a deep pout for a week. Finally, I got so jealous of Catherine that one night, drunk as a skunk, I nearly beheaded her with a medieval sword given to me by my uncle, John Drew. Yeah, I missed her by inches. She ran down to the 5th floor, to Monty Flagg's apartment. Monty was a wonderful artist and a good friend. She convinced Monty to give her sanctuary. I broke down the door and confronted Monty. I want my wife, Barrymore. I'll give her back into your custody if you'll promise to allow her to come down and let her model for me. Actually, I thought it was a good idea, so I consented. I thought it would give Catherine a purpose, get her out from under my shadow. So I said yes, and she became Monty's model. But one day, after a matinee of my show, I went around to Flagg's studio. The door was open. I walked in. The walls were covered with tits, ass, legs, and all of these canvases are of my wife, Catherine. She wasn't nude. She was naked. Monty walked into the studio and I screamed at him. I said, Monty, you're a randy, filthy, lecherous, treacherous old slut. You've been living with my wife. No, Jake, you've been living with her. I've been sleeping with her. I was stunned. I didn't know the old toad had that much wit in him. But maybe that's why I didn't throw him through the damned window. Anyway, the rest was paperwork. She had deceived me. She got her divorce decree and thus ended my first bus accident. But the divorce shattered me. I drank alone for months until Lionel found me on the Bowery. Jack, remember this. Your only salvation is in your work. And he picked me up out of the stool by the hair of my head. Barrymore is your name. Carry it with pride. Get back to work, Jack. I have a play for us to do together. On Broadway. The Barrymore Brothers on Broadway. Together. Now, I forget the name of the play. Anyway, Lionel, old scene-stealing iguana that he was making me nuts with his upstaging in rehearsals. In the play, I had a 2-minute telephone call with explaining to my wife why I wanted a divorce. Heavy stuff. Lionel was playing my lawyer. He was there just to listen, while I was pouring my heart out. No dialogue. Instead, Lionel decides to fix a drink, dropping ice cubes in the glass. Clink, clink, clink. Clink, clink, clink. Clink, clink, clink. Clink, 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 clink. Clink, 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 clink. Lighting a cigarette. I was furious. I complained to the director, but it did no good. Lionel had given him a terminal case of intimidation. So on opening night, the phone rings. I answer it. Lionel starts his upstaging routine. I paused, turned to him, and said, "It's for you." We never worked together again on stage. But one critic, get this, said Lionel Barrymore's telephone pause was one of the finest pieces of acting seen this season. The play was a huge hit, and it ran on and on until I was gripped with a terminal lethargy, and my understudy became a very happy man. I began to think of acting as a boring art. I didn't know if it was even an art, acting. It seems the junk pile of all the arts. I do in public what other people do in private. What's so goddamn artistic about that? I think it was this indifference that led me back to wine, women, and song. I cavorted in the village, committing the 7 deadly sins every night, sometimes showing up for a performance, Many times not, or showing up drunk as a loon. I was a wonderful disgrace to my profession. And then it happened again. Destiny found me again. A sea change took over my life. Ethel, now queen of the American theater, found me sitting once again under the same chestnut tree in Gramercy Park, 3 sheets to the wind, famed, moneyed, celebrated, yet feeling more lost and bewildered than I've ever felt in my life. Jack, Lionel and I are merely talented. You are gifted. Oh, Ethel, I'm just a piece of prime meat and a bum actor. You are lazy, spoiled, deceitful, cowardly. Didn't like cowardly. A disgrace to our family and reputation. And she handed me a small book. Do this and save yourself. So the next day, fighting a terrible hangover, I opened the book. I read it all day, all night, and my life did change. I read a play by a man named Shakespeare, who wrote a play about a man named Hamlet. And when you acted it, you were on a tightrope. And when you looked down, there was no net. That's Shakespeare. And he gave me back my life in the theater and respect and love for the craft of acting. You do Shakespeare? My uncle John Drew said. You can't even handle the simple English language. You sound like a cab driver from Brooklyn. And you sound like a cliched English actor with a cabbage up his ass, I said. But the cantankerous bastard did give me the name of a woman named Margaret Carrington, who thought that the voice was the sound of the soul. And one magic night, I found her. She became my Merlin. She was my white witch. Barrymore, you're doing Shakespeare now. Shakespeare is not the 100-yard dash. He is the decathlon of acting. I must give you a voice. Release your soul on the wings of sound. So I started with phonetics. That's a bad man, that man. That's the man who sat on my hat on the tram. Oh! That's a bad man, that man. That's the man who sat on my... That's a bad man, that man. That's the man who sat on my hat on the tram. That's a bad man, that man. That's the man who sat on my hat on the tram. That's a bad man, that man. That's the man who sat on my hat on the tram. Then we went through the vowels. In June, the lupines bloom and the tulips lose their... In June, the lupines bloom, and the tulips lose their beautiful hues. In June, the lupines bloom, and the tulips lose their beautiful hues. In June, the lupines bloom, and the tulips lose their beautiful hues. And then, her final litany of consonants. There was a young lady named Pratt, who had triplets named Matt, Pat, and Tat. It was fun in the breeding, but hell in the feeding. When she found, she had no tit for tat. Over and over and over, and through them I went. 6, sometimes 8 hours a day. No drinking, no smoking, no women. I was a monk, and I loved it. Margaret Carrington was a child, a saint, and a genius, and I loved her for her purity of spirit. She stripped me down and rebuilt me. I opened Hamlet on Broadway. Was it a success? During rehearsals, I made 14 novenas to St. Genesius, the patron saint of actors. And still, On opening night, my nerves attacked my bowels, and I urinated 11 times before the curtain went up. I puked once between the first and second acts, and again between the third and fourth acts. Then we all sat in the Algonquin bar in a state of strained gaiety as we awaited the imprimatur of the reviews. All we needed was a positive from Alexander Walcott and Stark Young, the two most powerful critics in the land. Alexander Walcott read, John Barrymore, a Hamlet to be cherished for the ages. Stark Young read, John Barrymore is the finest classical actor of our generation. Edwin Booth ran his Hamlet for 100 performances, a record. I closed my Hamlet after the 101st performance, a new record. I could have run it for 500 performances. I ended it for a simple reason. The theater demands endless repetition, and the only repetition I was good at was in my marriages. I was bored. Metaphysically bored, if you know what I mean. But perhaps the real reason I closed my Hamlet, I could not stand the coughers in the audience. It got so bad I took to walking to the edge of the stage and saying, "Excuse me, sir, did you come here to see a play? Or did you come for the last rites? Cough in the alley, goddammit." One night, about the 86th performance, I bought a fish and hid it under my cloak. And during my to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing, end them. The clinic started coughing, so I threw the fish into the audience and screamed, "Here, chew on this, you goddamn seals." After that, the audience began to diminish. So, I closed my Hamlet after beating Booth's record. Later, I opened in London at the Haymarket Theatre, where my father years ago snatched the name of Barrymore from off a playbill on the wall. London went wild over me. They crowned me. The only sour note was a vicious negative response from George Bernard Shaw, an anti-Catholic, anti-Irish, anti-American, pompous, overpraised, fraudulent Anglophile. I still despise the son of a bitch. But I now owned 2 continents, and my star joined the firmament of the famous. So stick that in your ear, GBS. By the by, and along the way, I got married again. I fell in love again. My second bus accident. Her name was Michael Strange. They named her right, believe me. Someone told me once that she said, when she met me, he looked slim, very poetic, hazel eyes of intense penetration, a mystic lover. Dear God, how could I resist that? Someone who sees me exactly as I see myself. Flattery, thy name is woman. Thank God. Now, Michael took Avant very deeply into guard. Deflowered at 14 by her cousin, She wrote a poem about it. Well, what are cousins for? She had bobbed hair and immense indigo eyes. She wore men's suits. After a while, we both wore men's suits. She called me Jake. I called her Jack. She smoked cigars with an ivory holder and could down a bottle of scotch in an evening without ever slurring a word. I was in her power. She had complete control over me. I was hers, and I loved it. But again, we enjoyed the pleasure of each other's company for what seems now a very short time. Slowly, I began to watch our marriage disintegrate among the bottles of vodka and scotch and gin, the shrieking parties, the synthetic smiles of the Strombergs, the Orsons, the Warners. Watched it deteriorate among the gaiety of London, Paris, Madrid, seeing it evaporate as we dined with the Hemingways, the Steins, the Fitzgeralds. They didn't know it then, but they were pallbearers to our marriage. The end of us became a wound that time, change, fame would never heal. And then one night, she spoke softly the fatal words, "Jake, I cannot take one more day of being known as Mrs. John Barrymore. Please, give me my own life back." I loved her so much. I quietly gave it back to her. Again, the rest was paperwork. Michael was the only woman who never betrayed me with another man. I know because I spent thousands in private detectives. And thus ended my second bus accident. To coin a phrase, I had the world at my feet, the crown on my head, and the scepter of fame in my hand. And yet I was unable to share it with anyone. I was an unlovable bastard, and I knew it. And in the deep midnight of my soul, where it is always 3 o'clock in the morning, as my friend Scott said, I began to wonder what it would be like to die. To sleep, no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished, to die. To sleep, to sleep, perchance to dream. There's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would bear the whips and scorns of time? But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pitch and moment in this regard, their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. But soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. Mr. Barrymore, what do you think of moving pictures? Celluloid is a new literature. Film, a brand new poetry. Mr. Barrymore, what do you think of Hollywood? It's the fantasy capital of the world, and I am a fantasist. What about Broadway, John? Theater is ephemeral. Film is forever. John, Stark Young, theater critic and scholar, has said Barrymore has abdicated his Broadway throne and fled, clutching his tarnished crown, to Hollywood, where he will trade it in for piles of money. May his career rest in peace. A critic is the only person I know who is constantly putting your foot in their mouth. He also said, the reasons for Barrymore's desertion are simple: greed, sloth, and dissipation. The embezzlement of his art is the end of Barrymore's career. Would you care to comment on that, John? Yes, if I may. I have known a few critics in my time, and I have observed that most of them suffer from a particular bowel obstruction. And I have concluded after years of observation that this affliction exists because most of them have their heads so far up their asses they can't see the truth in anything. Margaret Carrington has said if John Barrymore had stayed on Broadway, he could have built a theater of elegance and distinction. The American theater has vanished because of his abandonment. Margaret never said that. Never. The reason, the singular reason I left Broadway is contained in one word: Hamlet. I was acclaimed the finest Hamlet of my generation, the finest stage actor of my generation. Now I ask you, where can you go from there? Are there any other worlds left to conquer? You bet there is. Hollyweird, where I can become the finest film actor of my generation. All other reasons put forth are pure, unadulterated, all-American horseshit. As for the money, okay. I was paid $300,000 for 3 pictures. So what? Just a small payment for all those cheap one-night hotels with broken toilets, bed bugs, and matinees in Akron where the cast snored back at the audience. As Coriolanus said when he was banished from Rome, there is a world elsewhere. Let's get this straight for the record. Broadway needs me. I don't need Broadway. Oh. Line. Why masquerade it? Line. Everyone knew I did a menage a trois with the only 2 women I loved in my life: fame and money. I was monogamous to both of them. 10% to my agent, 10% to my manager, ditto for my manager, ditto for my PR guy. I was a percentage to these people. Bunch of goddamn parasites who very cleverly made themselves so necessary that I could not survive without them. They bled me dry. I was broke when I left Broadway. Let us not forget that. I am now in the fantasy capital of the world. And what do? The first person before anyone that I hire is my astrologer. I consult her on everything. Agents, lawyers, scripts, women, investments. Why? You see, I have a life-consuming fear of failure. The fear haunts me like an old secret sin that never goes away. I thought astrology would give me the essence of omnipotence. Another confession. Hollyweird has always filled me with this dreadful sense of ominosity. Is that a word? Well, it is now. Anyway, it's this massive feeling, a deep feeling of nothingness. And it captured my soul out there. I learned too late that the fault, dear Brutus, is not in the stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. The next 20 years of my life were written by Kafka, produced by Kafka, directed by Kafka, but starring that old satyr, Jake Barrymore. One day Edgar A. Poe asked, "Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream?" And Hollyweird answered, "Yes, so let's manufacture those dreams within dreams whose profits will be so gigantic we'll have to invent a new mathematics just to count the almighty dollars." My astrologer's name was Heloise. She told me to do, as my first picture, Sea Beast, a Hollyweird version of Moby Dick. In this version, I, as Ahab, not only kill the white whale, but get this, I return home and reclaim my woman, wooden leg and all. I told the screenwriter for the sequel we should have Ahab relentlessly pursued by a giant woodpecker. He didn't get it. Humorless son of a bitch. The script also included one of the most memorable camera directions ever written in the history of cinema. Ahab is knocked over the side and is being dragged down into the water, deeper and deeper, by the whale. Now get this, listen to this camera direction. We must see Ahab's eyes fill with tears as he is being dragged deeper and deeper into the depths. Can you believe that crap? But it broke every box office record in the history of silent cinema. I became an international myth. I became the Apollo of false gods that Hollyweird feeds to the desperate and deranged mob. Altogether, I've done some 82 films. Some that I'm proud of: Grand Hotel, 20th Century, Dinner at 8, Counselor at Law. Most of them, I must confess, were piles of excrement that stunk up the country. Sea Beast is the picture that gave me the label of the great profile. The deadly vanity of the actor made me realize that the left side of my face was exceptionally appealing to the camera. I think in only 4 films did you see my right side. I told people my right side couldn't act. Snide cameramen called me Lefty behind my back. But what did I care? Lefty was now a celluloid deity. Besides, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. So says the preacher. If I wasn't an actor, I would have been Willie Sutton. For very little work, I stole a whole lot of money. But what did I care? In Hollywood, no real acting is involved. They just want you to behave in front of the camera. Give us your left side, Jake. And look sadly into the camera, please. For Christ's sake, animals! Goddamn animals become stars on the screen. The Oscar nominees for the Best Actor Award for 1940, Rin Tin Tin, Lassie, Trigger, King Kong, and poor Johnny Weissmuller. And the winner is Lassie. So much for movie acting. But what did I care? I had acquired the throne. And, by the by, also acquired a queen. My 3rd bus accident. I married my co-star from Sea Beast, Dolores Costello, one of the most preposterously lovely human beings I had ever met. She was 19. I was 43. Our final love scene in Sea Beast was hysterically condemned by every religious sect in the country, which only increased by the thousands the lines around the theater. After a deep consultation with Heloise, we were married. And for a long time, we were ungodly happy. Dolores became the only sacred thing in my life. She possessed every atom, every thought of my being. I wanted to slay every dragon in the universe and lay them at her feet. Again, after another consultation with Heloise, I bought a boat, and we escaped to the sea to reclaim our sanity. And we became sane in the sweet solitude of each other's company. We stood every night on the bow of Infanta and looked at the fat, lovely, healthy, ever young, ever bright, forever Venus, our star. And we would, in the immensity of that ocean, pray our own Angelus, a gay, lifting, healthy, husky, tiny spout of a prayer, like two orphaned children. Our souls were stirred awake, and we said hello to each other, and truly believed that in our lives there would never be a goodbye. In my ascent to the throne, I lost touch with Lionel and Ethel, but I met my brother one day at the burial of John Gilbert, a fine silent film actor specializing in romantic leads. He had been destroyed by the talkies in both body and spirit. On film, John's voice sounded like the entire castrati choir. In silent film, in talkie film, when John said, "I love you," it sounded like a long hairpin was being inserted into his rectum. Destiny dealt him a lousy hand. But I had nothing but admiration for John because he played that hand with absolute dignity, which is more than I can say for most, including myself. Anyway, as I watched Lionel slightly teetering on the edge of John's grave, he was faded green, lost in a heroin haze, looking more dead than alive. "Jack, take me back to town, will you?" And I replied, "For you, Lionel? It hardly pays to go back, does it?" He turned and walked away among the shining stones, and I never went after him. I had conveniently forgotten that years before he had picked me up out of the Bowery and saved my career. Son of a bitch. You see, I was trapped. I had ceased caring about anything except the box office for Grand Hotel. That picture was breaking records in this country and in Europe. My kingdom was secured. As with my Hamlet, I had conquered continents. The only thing left to do was to build a castle, which I did and christened Bella Vista. I bought it for $50,000, only 6 rooms. In 5 years, I added, get this, 50 rooms. Indoor and outdoor Olympic swimming pools, 3 tennis courts, 3 racquetball courts, 3 handball courts. I had every court except a traffic court. It was as majestic and as elegant as Dolores, my queen, my love, my other self. I had an aviary, 300 specimens of birds, from black-headed nuns to red-billed Chinese magpies. I had birds unknown even to God. And one grand vulture, Mahoney, my dearest friend, who resided in a 2,000-year-old olive tree, which I had imported from Palestine for $6,000, just for him. And this is the insanity. In the central hall, I had mounted 2 dinosaur eggs, worth $10,000 apiece. The New York Museum of Natural History only had 1 egg. Just the plumbing cost me $40,000. The electricity, $70,000. The birds, the bees, and the cocoa-mint trees, $75,000. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, what was the depth of the abyss in myself that I tried to banish the emptiness with things, booze, women, boats, castles. Everything in my life was in triplicate. And still I could not find peace or meaning or any kind of salvation in the work, as Lionel said. I began thinking constantly of those old actors, unknown, unmourned, who died in cheap hotel rooms, alone. My uncle, John Drew, died between shows on a matinee day in some godforsaken town. I can't even remember its name. But he always had a wild look in his eye and a smile in his heart when he went on tour. Oh, now he was an actor. He worked his craft in 100 dark, half-empty theaters. But he was an actor. Some kind of missionary that brought delight and hope to the wilderness. Quick cut, as they say in Hollywood, to tiny signs of decline. In my ascent, I began to feel my descent. A simple but strange truth. I would sequester myself for days in the aviary, drinking, reading, watching the birds play, with my dear, wonderful friend Mahoney, the African vulture, perched on my shoulder. Oh, a boon companion he was to me. His feathering was topaz and lime. A silver streak ran down his breast. I would put small worms in my mustache, and he would pick them out. Never did he draw blood. I would recite Shakespeare to him as he perched on my shoulder. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. He'd lean his head up against mine and listen. He smelled of the jungle. I could hear his heart beating against my head. He had a kitten's breath, and he never stopped listening. And he never, ever coughed. One day, one of the gardeners found me sprawled out on the aviary floor. Incipient alcohol poisoning, my liver the size of a watermelon. For 3 days, I hovered in the space between death, delirium, and dream. I dreamed. I saw my father. So real, I could smell him. Father, forgive me for taking your wife. My stepmother, when I was 14, one intoxicated evening, gently took me to her bed. My father was on tour, and she was lonely, I suppose. But it only happened once, just once. Father, I have been desperately sorry all my life. And he just looked at me with this crooked smile on his face, and it was gone. Or I awoke. I can't remember. The next day, Lionel came to the hospital and told me that the aviary had been broken into, and half the birds, including Mahoney, were missing. Mahoney? Gone? My Mahoney? Fierce-beaked Mahoney with all that Shakespeare in his head? Gone? That afternoon, still fevered, I went to the window to get some cool air, and there, soaring in slow circles in the sky, was Mahoney. You son of a bitch, I screamed. Waiting for me to die, are you? How dare you predict my death, you goddamn Judas? The next day I got out of the hospital, and there the ungrateful bastard was, in the aviary, back at the house. I packed him off to the zoo and never looked back. These inexorable acts of cruelty began to dominate my life. I was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The minute I was abandoning Mahoney, that picture was breaking records all over the country, while I was breaking records in self-destruction. Suddenly, I got this desire to be invisible. a weird alcoholic fantasy. Heloise called it a death wish. Anyway, I'd stroll downtown, shabbily dressed, a false beard, hardly the great profile, the collar turned up high, Homburg pulled low over my eyes, and just watched the human parade and drank and drank and drank. I was a ghost, if you will. Nobody recognized me. I was free. Then one day in a low-life bar, 3 sheets to the wind, a big, burly, bully shithead bumped me at the bar. Oh, he was drunk and spoiling for a fight. And I could tell by looking at him he could kick my ass into Santa Monica. So it had me by the throat in a vice-like grip. My eyes were popping. So I whipped off my Homburg, tore off my fake beard, turned my neck so everyone in the bar could see the left side of my face. And I said, "Unhand me, you villain!" When they recognized me, everyone in the bar piled upon him and beat the living bejesus out of him. Thus was the Kafka zone I lived in Hollywood, dreading recognition but terrified of anonymity. There are no free lunches, buddy. Ask Mahoney. Son of a bitch. Another irony. At the peak of my power, I am inexorably sliding toward oblivion. Why? Shall we talk about my legendary drinking, womanizing, squandering? I've only been in 6 different sanitariums. Had to keep up the family heritage, didn't I? 4 rest homes and a desperate escape to the sea for sobriety and sanity. I attempted, made Herculean efforts to banish booze from my life, but I couldn't. Because without booze, I couldn't face the corruption of my life. Without a drink, I couldn't face the nausea of my existence. "What is it?" the doctor said. "Why do you drink so heavily?" And I said, "I don't know. Is there always a reason?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, repeating Heloise, "Doctor, don't you believe that my soul is a solid, impenetrable mystery? And all your isms, religions, therapies, mere illusion?" I didn't know Hamlet, but I played him. I don't know John Barrymore, or Jack Barrymore, or Jake Barrymore. I just play them the best that I can. Doctor. And my legendary womanizing? An exercise in hyperbole by everybody. I have loved in various degrees every woman that I was intimate with, but I never truly trusted any one of them. I had 3 bus accidents and a 4th marriage, but forget that. That was an airplane crash. Everybody aboard was killed. Enough said. And my squandering. Just listen to the pictures I made. Long-lost father, the coat and the glove, eternal love, hold that co-ed, oh, it gets worse, true confession, and nightclub scandal. Now that's what I call high squandering. Why? I don't know. Christ almighty, about my life, I barely had time to form the question, much less compose an answer for anybody. But, as they say in Hollywood, quick cut to close up. I began to lose my audience. Audiences are very much like moths. They embrace the hot light. But when the glow dims, you can't even hear the murmur of their departing wings. Those pictures lost money. Hollywood forgives genocide before it forgives losing money. The great profile was becoming the great jowl. And then it happened. One drunken evening, Dolores put the final nail in the coffin of my career. She said to me, "I would rather live 1,000,000 days in hell than spend one day in heaven with you." And that's a direct quote. "You're nothing but a drunken has-been, married only to a bottle," she said. "My name is Barrymore," I said. "I was the first matinee idol of my generation, the first great American classical actor of my generation, the first great silent film star, and the first great movie star. You're nothing but a mediocre actor who became a cheap celebrity," she said with a sweet smile. "And you're nothing but a celebrity whore who has betrayed me with every stagehand in the business," I said. And she said, "You betrayed yourself, John, and for that you will never forgive yourself." My corrosive wit abandoned me when she said that. No more lacerating witticism to defend myself. Instead, I wallowed in self-pity, the cheapest, most despised emotion in the canon of human feeling. The rest was paperwork. Once again, I tried to fill the void with the salvation of work, but I didn't have Shakespeare anymore, so nothing worked. We are flies to the wanton gods. They kill us for their sport. Loneliness plagued me. And dear sweet Ethel said, "John, you must give up wine, women, and song." "All at once?" I said. "No, taper off gradually." "Then I shall give up singing, Ethel." To die, to sleep, no more. Let me tell you something. Don't worry about death. It's just a very, very long dream that you desire to awaken from. Neither joyous, nor neither horrific. Something akin to a long Broadway run and a tedious horseshit play. It is rumored, like everything else around here, that when the loneliness, the unquiet solitude, and the absolute isolation start to become excruciating, you are then beginning to very slowly awaken into another life. The spreading thighs of death heave you into a new life. Life. Oh. I allow myself to hope that this is more than just an idle dream, and that someday, in some unknown somewhere, I will pulse with life again and embrace all my remembered sins lovingly and cry out, "Yes, let the play begin again." Now, let's get the beginning of my ending straight for the record. George Cukor, fabulous director, over the objections of the studio, asked me to play Mercutio to Leslie Howard's Romeo. A brilliant and generous actor was Leslie. The studio surrounded me with all these little assistants to make sure I wasn't drinking during the filming. I could not break wind without some little darling handing me a roll of toilet paper. But using my miraculous powers of deception, I outsmarted them. I had a crate of oranges delivered to my dressing room every day. The studio was ecstatic. The little assistants were beside themselves. Oh, he's not drinking. He stopped drinking. But the dumb bunnies didn't know that my chauffeur was injecting each of the oranges with a syringe full of vodka. By noon, I was shit-faced, but deceptively steady. I did, however, mind you, in a sword fight, stab Leslie in the right buttock, which everyone agreed was an unfortunate accident. But the death knell came when I had a line that read, "He heareth not, he stirreth not, he moveth, he moveth not. He heareth not, he stirreth not, he moveth not." But I said, "He heareth not, he stirreth not, he pisseth not." Q-Corps growled, "Jack, please, it's moveth not pisseth not." And I said, "Pisseth not is improving upon the text." Finally, after 26 takes, and Q-Corps on his 21st volume, I said, "All right, I'll saith, so thou mayest see how it stinketh." Finally, I said it right, and everybody applauded. "Fucketh the applause," I said. "Give me an orange." You see, I could not remember the word moveth. So I covered my memory loss with buffoonery. In Hollywood, you can drink rivers of gin, cornhole sparrows, hump monks, but if you forget your lines, it's exuent to alarums and excursions to your career. I had followed inscrutably in my father's footsteps. Full circle now. Once the word got out about my memory, I was reduced to calling agents or waiting in studio offices for confirmation. They'd usually send some studio lackey to break the news. "Mr. Barrymore, You have what?" We are going with..." "Speak up, for Christ's sake!" "We are going with Mr. Paul Muni." Sometimes silence is the only noble response. So, out of desperation, I consulted Heloise about my condition, and she told me I was in the diabolical hands of the noonday devil, a concept that started in medieval times. You see, in your middle age, you are at your most vulnerable, and the demons and satyrs make one last run at you, and all the temptations you were able to resist in your youth come back at you with a ferocious velocity. And I said, "That's horseshit. That doesn't apply to me. I never had a temptation in my life that I resisted. I went right along with all of them, for Christ's sake. I committed the 8th deadly sin, for Christ's sake. Don't you know that? And I fired the silly bitch on the spot." Slow fade to the end of a career. I once had a good friend named Wilde, who was one of the major lunatics of his time. But he wrote something that haunted me all my life, which they found scribbled on a piece of paper in my wallet after I died. "And all men kill the thing they love. By all let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword." I wonder if Oscar knew he had written my epitaph. But it's a good life if you don't weaken, as my father used to say. Is there any consolation? Perhaps. My image on a tiny piece of film in 1,000 different theaters, ages and ages hence. Shall I live forever? Flickering on a bare screen, entertaining a constantly dreaming audience. Heady stuff, huh, pal? It's all horseshit, pal. Here I am. And there you are. You get the gist of it, pal? What matters most is that I'm alive now, here with you. Because, and remember this, I never needed anything, anyone. John, Jack, Jake, Barrymore is not dead. I'm here with you. in this instant of time. Because all I ever really needed was an audience. And now I think I'll go up and haunt the balcony. That's all there is. There isn't any more. The rest is silence.